Why did you let him kill me? It was the clown. Make the clown go away.
Most Idaho urban legends stem from their Native American culture and real historical tragedies, with a little bit of conspiracy theory thrown in. But the oral traditions and ghost stories from the Gem State are as unique and eerie as they come. Join me today as we take a look at 10 of the many urban legends and hauntings Idaho has to offer. The old Idaho State Penitentiary began construction of its first building in 1870 and accepted the first prisoners in 1872. Over the next 18 years, the prisoners were held in a single cell house. By 1890, the new cell house was completed and had 3 tiers of 42 steel cells. The third tier, facing the Rose Garden, was death row, where the condemned men could look out the windows and see the gallows. The Rose Garden started out as a test garden for Jackson and Perkins in the late 1800s and was entirely tended to by the prisoners. On the northeast corner of the garden sat the wooden gallows, where 6 of 10 people were executed between 1901 and 1926. In the Rose Garden, many people have reported experiencing sudden severe headaches and seeing floating red lights. The apparition of a prisoner is also reported to be seen, still tending the roses, then suddenly disappearing. In 1934, the Rose Garden gallows was torn down for the last time when the warden believed its presence was a bad influence on young prisoners. Siberia, the solitary confinement building, was constructed in 1826 with 12 3-foot by 8-foot cells where inmates were put for bad behavior. They were known to spend several days to several weeks at a time here and were only fed once a day, able to shower once a week, and the only light they had was what shined through the small openings at the tops of their cells. Guards later recalled that they often heard the solitary confinement prisoners screaming constantly. According to reports from visitors, Siberia and Cell House 5 maximum security has the heaviest feeling to it. The multi-purpose building was constructed in 1923. Through the years, it was used as a shirt factory, laundry, license plate shop, bakery, shoe shop, hobby room, and housed a communal shower. It is also reported to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. There is one confirmed death in the building, which happened during the August 1971 riots. Guards found the body of William Butler rolled up inside of a gym mat days after the riot ended. Cell House 5 was constructed in 1952 and was the largest, most modern building at the old Idaho State Penitentiary. It was also the site of a suicide that made headlines across the country. In 1935, Douglas Van Vleck was convicted of murdering his ex-wife and 2 police officers. He was sentenced to hang on December 10, 1937, but things didn't quite go as planned. On December 9, 1937, around 6:30 p.m., Douglas was visited by a local reverend for his last sacraments. His parents also visited to say their goodbyes. His cell was closely guarded during this time. When leaving, Douglas's mother hugged him, whispering something in his ear. After his parents left, Douglas broke away from the guards, climbed up into the rafters. He walked across the beam to a corner where he stayed. The warden and the guards tried for over 30 minutes to get him to come down. Finally, Douglas yelled out to them, "I have a right to choose the way I die." Then he jumped head first 30 feet to the concrete floor below, landing on his head and right shoulder. When the guards checked him, they found that he was still alive. Prison officials then rolled him onto the mattress, covered him with a blanket. Douglas Van Vleck was pronounced dead at 12:32 a.m. on December 10, 1937, just 20 minutes after his scheduled execution time. It was later said that his mother whispered to him that he could choose the way he died and slipped him a razor, which they found on his body later. In 1954, the last cell house to be constructed was completed and held the worst of the worst and was home to death row. The cell block was made with all solitary confinement cells and had built-in gallows and a drop house. It is also said to be one of the most haunted parts of the prison, even though only one execution happened here. On the evening of September 22, 1956, Cora Dean met Raymond Snowden at the Hi-Ho Club. After refusing to leave with him, they argued in an alley behind the club. Cora reportedly kicked Raymond in the groin and then he attacked her, slitting her throat. Later, detectives found her spinal cord had been severed and she had been stabbed 29 times. Raymond Snowden is also known as Idaho's Jack the Ripper. He was convicted of Cora Dean's murder and would be the only inmate hung in Cell House 5. That execution didn't go as planned either. On October 18, 1957, Raymond was led from his cell on death row to the gallows. Directly across from the gallows was a small room for the victim's family and officials to watch through a large glass window. When the noose was placed around his neck, the large lever was pulled to open the trapdoors. The trapdoors opened so violently that it shattered the large glass window. The noose also failed to break Raymond's neck, and he hung there for 15 minutes, slowly strangling to death. Reports from this area include sounds of someone struggling to breathe, cell doors closing, and full-bodied apparitions. It is believed that the ghost of Raymond Snowden still lingers here. If you ever lived in Boise, Idaho for any amount of time, you may have heard about the murder house at the corner of Linden Street and Leadville. If not, a warning. This tragic crime story is not for the faint of heart. The crime may have happened several decades ago, but still remains one of the most disturbing things to happen in the community. On June 30th, 1987, a fight broke out between three men, Preston Moor, Darren Cox, and Daniel Rogers, who was the owner of the house. Preston was shot in the shoulder as a result of the fight. He tried to run, knocking on the neighbors' doors for help, but before anyone could get to the door, Darren and Daniel dragged him back to the house. Once inside, Preston was fatally shot in the head. The neighbor that Preston had run to for help called the police. The police did not respond promptly, and the neighbor went to bed. In the meantime, Darren and Daniel dismembered Preston's body, placing the pieces into plastic bags and putting them into the trunk of their car. They drove down to Brownlee Reservoir near Weiser, Idaho, and dumped the body parts. The gloves and plastic bags were thrown into a dumpster behind a Marydel, Idaho convenience store. The next morning, police finally responded to a second call from the neighbor, and they found bloodstains on the street and several of the other neighbors' doors. They tried to contact the residents inside, but nobody answered. The police then received a search warrant and discovered the grisly crime scene inside. Shortly after, Darren and Daniel were caught and charged with murder. Both cooperated with the police and gave them detailed accounts of the incident. Darren was given a lesser sentence as an accomplice to murder and only served 6 years. Daniel was found guilty of murder and is currently serving a fixed life sentence. This gruesome murder has spawned many legends attached to the house, including spontaneously dripping blood from the walls and a ghostly woman being seen in the front window. It is also said that the blinds will open and close on their own. Farragut State Park was founded in 1964 and is a common tourist destination in Coeur d'Alene Mountains. Thousands of people come to the area to enjoy camping, hiking, picnics, mountain biking, boating, fishing, and swimming. Originally, the area was housing for the Farragut Naval Training Station and was the second largest naval training center in the world during its time. In 1945, it was home to a prisoner of war camp by the United States Army. Approximately 900 Germans were housed in the camp. The POW camp was only used for a short time and then was transformed into the Farragut College and Technical Institute in 1946. The school only remained open for 3 years due to financial issues. Today, Farragut State Park houses the Museum at the Brig, where visitors can see artifacts from the war, as well as Navy and boot camp memorabilia. Visitors are also able to explore some of the old prison cells. It is also rare to find a visitor that has not had some sort of paranormal experience here. Reports from guests and tour guides include full-bodied apparitions of men in uniform, objects moving on their own, equipment problems, flashlights turning on and off by themselves, strange tapping, and heavy metal prison doors rattling, strange lights and orbs in and around the cells, and some visitors have reported to have had rocks thrown at them while exploring. One specific story that is shared is about a high-ranking German prisoner that was captured and aggressively questioned. The man died from the techniques used, and the guards left his body locked in a lower-level cell. A short time later, guards and prisoners started reporting strange noises and lights coming from the dead man's cell. Visitors have also reported seeing faces looking through the bars and windows of the brig, and many have heard unexplainable yelling while touring. Along the shore, people have reported seeing a man in an old-style uniform walking along the shoreline. The large statue of a sailor that is there is also said to move and change expressions. Nearby at the campground, visitors have reported strange yelling, hearing old method gunshots, strange flickering lights, and hearing untraceable human sounds. Many people also believe the trails leading to the water are their hot spots for paranormal activity. The Bates Motel in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, was originally an officers' barracks at the Farragut Naval Training Station during World War II. After the war, it was sold and moved about 30 miles south to the current location and turned into the Roadway Inn. In the 1950s, Randy Bates, a local prominent accountant, bought the motel and renamed it before the movie Psycho was released. According to rumors, Psycho author Robert Bloch stayed at the motel during the 1950s, and in the 1980s, the movie was also filmed here. The movie production crew is said to have put the now famous sign up and left it after production was finished. Today, the Bates Motel is a budget motel with a rich history, both fiction and fact. According to staff and guests, there is a constant paranormal activity, especially in rooms 1 and 3. Reports include lights flickering on and off by themselves, ashtrays falling off the table when no one is near it, sudden cold spots, strange, unexplainable noises, and guest belongings being moved about. The building that houses the Lewiston Civic Theater today was constructed in 1904 and was a Methodist church. The sandstone building itself contains 20 stained glass windows. As a stipulation in the sale of the building in 1972, the Civic Center was to preserve and care for these windows. For a short period after the sale, both the church and the theater group shared the building. Some patrons still remember a rousing sermon that was delivered through the sunroof of a VW Beetle, which was part of the set for the first production here. The building was placed on the National Register in 1980. During the 1980s, 2 young women visiting the theater and 1 man who worked here went missing on the same night. It is believed that whatever happened to them happened in or near the theater. The 2 young women's bodies were found some distance away, but the body of the 1 man was never found. Police suspected a second man that also worked at the theater to be involved or responsible for the disappearances, but have never been able to prove it. The family of the missing man believes his body to be buried on the premises, but the theater will not give permission for them to search. Since the disappearances, legends say the theater is haunted by one of the young girls and possibly more spirits. There are also rumors that one of the previous late directors has been seen sitting in the seats as if waiting for the show to start. Many people also claim there to be at least 50 different spirits in the building. Who they are and why they're there, nobody knows. Besides apparitions, other paranormal activity reported include electrical equipment playing on its own, phantom footsteps in empty areas, and lights turning on and off by themselves. While most states have conspiracy theories, it seems Idaho is definitely no stranger and has its own set of strange and paranoid ideas. Whether you believe or not, it does make for a fascinating peek into modern culture. One theory is that Idaho doesn't even exist. Yes, you heard that right. Idaho doesn't exist. In the Americanized form of the Blythehill conspiracy, and, of course, according to many web pages, which have called into question the very existence of Idaho as a physical location, the rational argument boils down to 3 premises. Do you know anybody from Idaho? Have you been to Idaho? Do you know anyone who has ever been to Idaho? For most, the answer is no. Therefore, Idaho cannot be. To many, Idaho itself is an urban legend, much like when people started believing the world was round. There are also many that believe that cartographers put Idaho on the map because they needed a barrier to separate Utah from Canada and protect Montana and Washington. Then you have those who actually live in Idaho that believe their state is a government-operated mind control vacuum. Idaho exists, but only as a state of mind. The whole idea stirs up an abundance of philosophical arguments, but according to conspiracy logic, if you feel like you're living in Idaho right now, odds are it is simply a result of the many other conspiracies at work, like chemtrails being proof of a government plot, the legend of Bigfoot being a large-scale cover-up, and the government purposely drugging residents with fluoride in the water. The Shoshone Indian ice caves were created from volcanic flows thousands of years ago and lie beneath the desert. It presents the surrealism of ice inside a volcano. The cave's temperature remains at freezing all year, even if it's 100 degrees outside. The caves were discovered in the 1940s and a second entrance was added, which melted all the ice. When the second entrance was closed off again, it restored the ice caves. Inside the caves, heights vary from 8 foot tall to 30 feet tall, and it is about 1,000 feet long with bridges suspended over sheets of ice several feet thick. Today, tours and a gift shop are available to visitors, as well as nature walks, bird watching, and hiking. The Shoshone Indian ice caves are also considered one of the most haunted places in Idaho. According to legends, the cave is also where a native princess was buried many years ago. Employees have reported that long after visitors have left the caves, phantom footsteps and hushed voices can be heard from within. The Owyhee Plaza Hotel was constructed in 1910 and played an important role in the Boise community, hosting famous politicians, musicians, and other prominent visitors through the years. In the early years, the hotel boasted many amenities, the most popular being the rooftop garden. The hotel also included a restaurant, dance floor, bar, and occasionally live bands. In the 1960s, the Owyhee Company bought the building and used the top 3 floors as their corporate headquarters. In 1992, the building was bought again and the whole building restored back into a hotel. Today, the building has been converted into 35 apartments with banquet facilities and office space. According to staff and visitors, all the previous guests may not have left. They report that when it was a hotel, guests staying in room 136 with her husband awoke one night and saw the apparition of a woman in her room. She reported that when she asked the spirit who she was and what she wanted, it vanished. Various apparitions have been reported in several guest rooms as well as throughout the building. People have also reported unexplainable noises and the feelings of being watched. Big Payette Lake was named after a French-Canadian fur trapper who roamed the area in the early 1800s. The natural lake is over 5,000 acres of clean, still water and is surrounded by towering pine trees. The deepest area of the lake is near the northwest shore and is about 392 feet deep. The Native Americans who spent summers here were said to fear the calm, seemingly bottomless waters, often telling stories of an evil spirit that lurked in the depths. The first documented sighting of the lake monster was from a railroad logging crew in 1920. They reported that while cutting railroad ties near the upper end of the lake, they saw what they thought was a large floating log in the water. Then, the log began to move forward as well as up and down, leaving its own wake. In 1944, another group spotted the creature and described it as being 35 feet long, with a dinosaur-type head, pronounced jaw, humps like a camel, and shell-like skin. After this account, serpent hunters began coming to the area in hopes of capturing the creature or at least getting a picture of it. In August of 1944, Time magazine reported that 30 people had seen the creature and they had started calling him Slimy Slim in July of that year. In 1946, a group of 20 people reported to see the creature again. Dr. G.A. Taylor described it as being 40 feet long and seemed to keep diving down in the water. He also reported that it left a wake like a small boat. In 1954, there had been many reports of Slimy Slim, and residents decided the monster needed a better name. A. Boone McCollum from the Star News held a national contest to rename the creature. The winning entry came from Leslie Henner Turry of Springfield, Virginia. She suggested Sharlie, like "Was you der, Sharlie?" which was in reference to a one-liner used by Jack Pearl in a popular radio show at the time. Sightings of Sharlie have been reported throughout the years, but still, no official evidence has been offered up. Residents claim that they need no proof she is real. Her legend continues to grow, adding imagination and mystery to the area folklore as an unofficial symbol of McCall, Idaho. In Hell's Canyon Wilderness, there is a series of mountain peaks that form a portion of the Idaho-Oregon border known as the Seven Devils. According to the Nez Perce legends, the peaks were once giant, fearsome monsters that ate children. To keep their children safe, they asked for help from Coyote, a central figure in the Nez Perce mythology. On the path he knew the giants traveled, Coyote dug 7 massive holes and filled them with boiling hot water. When the giants began their travels east, they fell into the scalding pits. Coyote then transformed the giants into stone as punishment. He then opened the canyon at their feet known as Hell's Canyon, where the giants stand today, trapped as mountains.